Sorry, I had my volume all the way down.
You still lapping around the track, bro?
Yeah, but I just got done with the
All
race.
right. You're making me want to play Forza with every time you talk about Need for Speed. Because I mean, look, I gotta have the simulation stuff. I gotta have like TCS off and be able to do all the fucking sim stuff. I wish I could get into the arcade racers.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I like them all. I just love racing games. That's my fucking
I,
jam. So fucking
I
give
agree
me.
with you. As long as it's got some sim to it, I love racing games.
Yeah,
I mean, even if it's like a look. Do you remember the old Project Gotham racing series?
yeah, yeah.
Yep, that was a really good series, but it wasn't super simulation, nor was it super like arcadey. It was like a really good mixture of the both. Um,
Yeah. Dude, the first racing game that I truly fell in love with, and it was like, oh, this is badass, was called Zero G or something like that on
mhm.
like Nintendo. Dude, it was so good. And then Mario Kart 64, badass.
So I did play Mario Kart on the what was the one on GameCube? I played that one a lot. On the what was the one on GameCube? I played that one a lot.
That was Mario Kart. That was after 64.
Yeah, that was right after 64. So it was Mario Kart Double Dash.
Double Dash, that's right. Yep.
Was it Double Dash?
Yep.
Let me look it up. It's just us two. Oh, we got Carnal in here. What's up, Carnal?
Oh,
Look it up. What did I just call it again?
Mario Kart Double Dash came out in year 2003. So yeah, that's about right. 64. Nintendo 64 would have been like 98 or 99.
Talking about a brother feeling old. Oh my god.
The Mario Kart
Double
64.
Dash came out in 2003. That's 20 years ago. Oh my god. I'm so old.
Mario Kart 64 came out in 60 in 96. Dude, but that's one of the best Mario Karts that they ever made. If you've never played that one, holy shit, dude, it's so good.
No, I'm not even gonna put this on. Fuck it. Fuck them. I was gonna put my headset on, but I said fuck it.
Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah, Carnal. You might be older than us. I'm only 37. Um,
Yeah, I'm only 37 too.
Liar.
I'm not that much older though.
48. Yeah, that's not old. You're good.
No, for 42.
Medical
48.
technology will advance pretty quickly. We'll probably all be living to like 120.
No, 42, man. It's tacking on 6 years done, but come on now, buddy.
No, 48. Carnal nature is 48.
Oh,
That's what I was talking into in chat.
Bojangles got his 48 going on
He
70.
got it working. He got it working on his PC. Fuck yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Let's get him. Oh, you got it working on the phone? Hell yeah. For now. Now. Yeah, PC is the way I do this shit because I can't do it on my phone. It would just be a mess. Some people do it on their phones, but no thanks. I'll do it on my PC. Yep. Come on, Perry. God damn it! I need you. Need you to show up so I can get started.
Did you reach out to Honeyham?
I think he said he would be driving or some shit. Let's fucking text him. You gonna be able to come on?
Bojangles.
Give Bo some fucking tech support. Scott, help that boy, help him out.
I'm a grandpa that can pop and lock, motherfucker. It's so straight.
He said he was having trouble on his phone getting the calling app to work.
Oh,
So
well,
now that it's working, that's good. Your phone's crank powered.
dude, Bo cracks me up. uh,
Nice. Ooh, yes. Now we got Paul. Ow, ow, ow. How did you like your what was it that you were watching?
Travis recommended music or Legally Blonde, the musical.
Gotcha.
So I was watching the first act. Sorry, Cardinal, it wasn't your show. I'm sure your show was great though. Not as great as this one's gonna be, but you know, still have
We'll
to
wait for
try.
people to. I need to invite some because I set it for 8 o'clock, so I just started it early. You know what I mean? Uh, so I don't expect anybody to come in here until 8 o'clock early.
Uh, are you
Boom.
are you using the DSM-5? Is that what you're using?
Yes, and the CDC website. Uh, CDC or World Health Organization. Let me look which one this is.
I'm in the bathtub right now, so.
hello.
Types of mental health. Oh, that's an interesting
Yeah.
one. Wow. Who we got else in here? Nope, it's still just us. I'm gonna fucking kill Perry.
Why is that?
Well, he's the one who usually goes with the dialectic with me about all this stuff, so it's very helpful to have him here and bounce off ideas off. I mean, you guys are very helpful too. It's just Perry is like he has this question machine in his brain that literally he'll ask questions about anything, and it always works out that they're good questions. So he has a superpower. He's good at it.
Where did you leave off last time?
We got tangented and nivicked so many times. I don't know where we ended up. I don't even know if I got to look to talk about the list. I think we just randomly, kind of stopped off there. But no, I mean we can. I'll go over some of them right now. Fuck it, it's just us five. I'll talk about it. So we've generally, uh, if we're talking about the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, that's called the DSM. They've had 5 of them. And there's also another one called the International Classification of Diseases, the ICD, which is worldly. I think. I don't think it's specifically. Let's check on that. Yeah, it's the globally used diagnostic tool, whereas the DSM I think is more specifically based in America. So the DSM is an American Psychiatric Association standard reference for psychiatry, with over 450 different definitions of mental disorders. The ICD, on the other hand, is published by the World Health Organization, and it's the international standard for classifying all mental diseases. So, the diagnostic criteria and information in the DSM and ICD are revised and updated with each new version. Uh, this lists conditions which are currently recognized as mental disorders as defined by these two systems. So, there is disagreement in various fields of mental health care, obviously, including psychiatry and psychology and neuropsychology and neuroscience, over the definitions and criteria used to delineate mental disorders, to explain them. So, in terms of the DSM 6, what's going to happen is they're going to go away from traits and more towards behavioral patterns. I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like yet, but I've read a lot of good literature and watched a lot of good experts say that this is going to be the case with the DSM 6. So, the, the difference between a mental illness and a neurological disorder also needs to be taken into account and be thought of, because a neurological disorder is it's a disorder of the nervous system, the structural, physiological, biochemical part of the nervous system, which that is that goes up into your brain as well. But mental illness is mainly talking about neurochemicals and malfunctioning parts of the actual brain itself, the physiology, the anatomy. So that's just a general overview of what the DSM is and how mental illness is separated from neurological disorders and stuff like that. Um,
And you
Did I
talked
make it?
about
Yeah, go ahead.
oh, what is considered disorderly, like when it is not
Yeah. So a
disorder.
disorder, exactly. So in the DSM-5, a disorder is when you have more than 60 to 70% of the traits, and those traits are causing you, whether comorbidly with something else or just by itself, whether they're causing you a detriment to your life to where you can't go to a job, you stop washing yourself and bathing and eating and stuff like that. You have
Function.
full issues with living life naturally. That's when it's considered an illness or a disorder. Because there are many people who have high functioning disorders to where they don't get stuck in bed and they don't, have trouble holding jobs and things like that. I would say that everybody has some form of high functioning mental illness. That's just my opinion. That's not, literature, academia, but I think that everyone is in some way neurodivergent. I don't think there is a state of neurotypicality. I just don't see that. But I will say that in terms of like a disorder, like what I have with bipolar, or like what you have, that's going to be the defining feature is the fact that we cannot take care of ourselves when we're not properly medicated, or when we're not properly therapeutized. Um, so I don't know. Give me your perspective on that, Paul.
Well, I think we need, if we're talking about our own disorders, we should be careful whether or not people want to disclose them or not.
What do you mean now? I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Oh, because you said like what you have. I was like, I don't know if I've ever disclosed.
No,
that.
I said give me your take on what I was talking
Oh, I
about.
see.
I'm not asking you to share your life story and all the stuff you're dealing with unless you want to.
I think like just starting with figuring out whether someone is living functionally or not to begin with is extreme, like seems very difficult on its own.
A really good example is autism. Have you ever seen someone who is high functioning autism? Because I have, and I know we all know one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So have you ever seen low functioning autism? Because I have. It's a completely different story. They have to live at home their entire life because they literally cannot take care of themselves as a neurotypical adult would, right?
Right. Well, like I don't know, it could be a lot of different things. So
Sure.
like whether it's like a sensory thing, different communication related skills. If a person isn't able to meet their own health needs because of communication.
Mm-hmm.
Forgive me, this is a stupid question, but are there levels to disorder, or is it a binary?
No, I don't think it's a binary where you have it or you don't have it. Like I said earlier, I think everyone is neurodivergent to a certain degree, and I know that term is only really used in autism circles, but here it applies in some fashion. Neurotypical would be like an average adult going to work every day, having children, doing those things. Someone with like low functioning autism would probably never have any romantic partner, probably never be able to pay bills or like organize their life in such a way to where they could take care of themselves.
They may not be able to go into the community on their own.
They may be non-speaking
there might be
autism.
safety concerns.
Yeah, Yeah, yeah. I recommend anybody to go watch. And Scott, what's the name of it? Special Books by Special Kids.
I like that channel.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yes.
excellent.
Special books for special kids.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's where you're going to get to actually see people a lot of times struggling with their mental disorders.
And it's nice because they're telling their own story
That's right.
as well, which a lot of times people don't, or people with disabilities
But
don't get to do
but you
that.
can tell that some of them are high functioning. You can tell that some of them are low functioning. You know what I mean? Uh, any high functioning mental illness is basically, like I said, everybody's got one. Uh, I wouldn't even doubt that most millennials are on some form of spectrum of ADD. Every one of them, or every one of us, excuse me.
Mhm.
I just wouldn't doubt it.
Is that one that you covered? Like
No,
these,
we didn't even get to go over anything last time because fucking. Uh,
oh, you didn't
oh,
cover any specific.
we didn't cover shit last time on the first one because we got off. I took callers way too early and we got off on tangents and it. I was just trying to be laid back, but this time will be a little bit more
So what?
academic.
So what else would you like to cover in
Oh,
this
I'm gonna
episode?
go. Yeah, I'm gonna go over that. I just wanted to welcome Perry to the room. What's up, Perry?
Oh, is he here?
Yeah,
Hey, what's going on, guys?
I need you here. You and
Um,
Paul are excellent. Y'all are talking back and forth. So
what
let's do.
what things are actually what are some examples of things that are binary in terms of human characteristics?
When it comes to the human mind, I don't know if there is such a thing as binary unless our brains are computational and then it can be broken down into like
Ones and
qubits and ones
zeros.
and zeros, maybe that case. But no, I don't see anything in terms of psychology of the human mind that is completely only binary. I don't, but there may be something.
I
If
would
you have a
also
different idea.
I would also say to the highly functioning autism versus low functioning. Um, just to it's a question of mine. Like it corresponds with society and how society deems to be like what is functioning and what is
That's right.
not
Yes.
functioning.
Yeah, that makes
I mean,
sense.
that's why I
To
say
point
like
out.
people paying their bills and stuff. You know what I mean? Like if they
Yeah.
lived in a society where they were in a commune, maybe they would make it
Ah,
work. Where if
good point.
everybody took care of everybody else, kind of thing. But
Right.
it's not like that. So go ahead,
Did you bring
Paul.
up autism or ASD earlier? Because that one has like neurological components to it, or I forgot what I was brought up.
Well, I didn't bring up. We can look it up real quick. We can
You
just
said
look up
something about ASD, or
yeah, ASD is
what's
autism
ASD?
spectrum disorder.
Oh, okay.
So, autism spectrum is ASD, identifies a loosely defined cluster of neurodevelopmental issues characterized by challenges in social interaction, verbal and nonverbal communication, and often the presence of repetitive behaviors and restricted interests. Other common features may include unusual responses to sensory stimuli and a preference for sameness or unusual adherence to routines. So it says autism is generally understood to be a spectrum disorder. So a spectrum disorder is a mental disorder that includes a range of linked conditions, sometimes also extending to include singular symptoms and traits. The different elements of a spectrum either have a similar appearance or are thought of to be caused by the same underlying mechanism. So if it's a spectrum disorder, it can manifest differently in each person. Any autistic individual is likely to show some, but not all, of the characteristics associated with the disorder, and the person may exhibit them to varying degrees and frequencies. There is large variation in support needs of autistic people, and some are non-speaking, while others have proficient spoken language. Um, while psychiatry has traditionally classified autism as a neurodevelopmental disorder, the autism rights movement and some researchers see autism as a part of neurodiversity. This is where we get into the neurodivergence and neurotypicality. The natural diversity in human thinking and experience is neurodiversity, with strengths, differences, and weaknesses. According to this view, autism is something to be accommodated as a difference, not cured or prevented. Autistic people still have a disability or can have a disability and can still have support needs, but need to be accommodated. But they do need to be accommodated rather than cured in this view. So this view of the condition has led to controversy among those who are autistic and advocates, practitioners, and charities of it as well. So that's autism right there in a nutshell. And it looks like they have a spectrum model and I can give you a list if you want the pre-diagnosis and the common signs for autism if you want me to. What do you think? What does anybody think about what I've been reading?
Well, another question that came to me was and usually these are unfruitful questions I find when I talk with you guys, because it doesn't, there's always the issue with infinite regress, of course, and our origins. I put such a heavy, I concentrate on the origins of certain ideas so hard when it really it isn't as fruitful as maybe I intuitively think it is. But I just wonder if, were there, assuming we came from apes and we take that notion, were there monkey or apes with autism? Were there Homo sapiens? Were there
let's ask a general question. Can apes have mental illnesses?
I would think so, Perry. I think
Okay,
too.
We got it. Okay. Complex PTSD, depression, and other psychiatric conditions have been diagnosed in other species, including chimpanzees, although it is unclear how appropriate that in the DSM-5.
And then autism, did it say autism in there or just PTSD?
Can apes have autism?
But
Sounds like such a troll question, even though it's not.
Yeah, I know, right?
Scientists create the first ever autistic monkeys, and this was BBC.com News.
Created?
And
Created
this is
or
from 2020. No, this is from January 2016.
Did you say created or discovered?
Yeah, I'm sure it was artificial selection, I'm sure. They were
Okay,
genetically
I see.
modified by Chinese scientists to carry a gene linked to autism in humans.
So probably not back in the day, though. Back in our...
Probably not, I would say.
Yeah.
well, that's the thing with the genes, though. It could have happened, but they probably wouldn't have lived too long. Right?
Didn't reproduce either.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. ASD can occur in dogs, but it's called canine dysfunctional behavior, CBD. CDB, sorry.
C, isn't canine with a... Oh, no. I'm thinking of K9. K9
No,
C-A-N-I-N-E.
canine as in the canine dysfunctional behavior.
I was thinking K9 started with a K, but I was thinking of K and then 9. You know how they do K9 unit? But yeah, it's C-A-N.
I mean, it's an idiopathic condition. It's unknown, but I mean, they have measured it a little bit. So, but it's, yeah. So technically, monkeys, apes, we know dogs can have depression. We know that. You know what I mean? That's something we can observe.
Well,
they can also feel happy. We can observe that.
If the apes had that random mutation and just didn't reproduce, then how did humans ever obtain it? Just through some gene sequencing?
That's a
that
good
went wrong,
fucking
or...
question that we need to ask. We should have asked that question to Christopher Mason. How did mental illness arise in humans?
Right.
Well, obviously, we're finding out through the research that we're doing right now that it can occur, that these things can occur. The autism thing was just monkeys in general, I think, is what the scientists create the first ever autistic monkeys.
True.
But who's to say that there weren't autistic monkeys 300,000 years ago, right?
Right. That just didn't reproduce, or maybe
Yeah,
they did
how would we
reproduce,
know?
who knows?
Yeah, maybe they didn't reproduce because they were autistic, right?
Maybe it's a
There's
recessive gene.
also two-headed snakes, right? they just.
There's a lot of crazy ass shit, bro.
There's a lot of crazy shit that happens with genetics, and it doesn't necessarily mean did this two-headed snake have parents that were 10 generations ago that were two-headed?
Yeah, right.
Typically that happens when the the cell doesn't divide completely. The zygote,
But
I thought.
was
but
the
it's
two-headed
it's
snake
some sort of
artificial, or was that natural?
no, it's natural. It happens like
It's a
relatively
natural thing.
often.
It happens in multiple
Because I know we could
species.
artificially make some crazy ass shit.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean,
but
there have been humans born with like mouths in the side of their heads, right? It's they got a
oh
little
yeah,
bit
yeah, yeah, right.
like right, like so, like
So
a lot of this good stuff.
go ahead, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, like, I mean, a lot of this stuff does come from like genetic disposition.
I almost dropped all my weed. Sorry.
It's just us in here, guys. There's nobody else listening or anything.
Uh,
It's just us five.
I don't know. I don't know other spectrum disorders. I'm interested in that. If they're all, like what they would be.
Yeah, well, so
If there are.
my pseudo theory is like, and that's why I asked, is there anything that's binary, Kapow? Because like sexuality, clearly a spectrum. ADD, as Thomas said, I think it's a spectrum. Don didn't agree with me when I brought it up to him a couple days ago. There's tons of things that seem to be on a spectrum, and it just, I'm sorry, I'm actually blanking on what your question was, but it seems like most mental illness, if not everything, is like on a spectrum. Uh,
Uh,
but what was your
like the
what did you say?
person's the severity of the illness, or the functioning of the person, or the the different types of like components that make up that disorder. Because like with autism, it could be like developmental and neurological, but not all disorders are like that. Like some of them are just mental
Or
illnesses,
just
right?
like strictly genetic, and then perhaps strictly environmental or developmental?
Yeah,
I mean, you could
exactly.
look at it and just like not even mental, right? I might be wrong here. I probably am wrong, but it seems to me even things like diabetes are like a spectrum disease, right? So like it changes. There's some people that it affects a lot more than others, right? Depending on how far along you are in your pancreas not producing insulin, right? So your
Well,
pancreas can produce very little insulin versus producing none. That'd be a spectrum of like your diabetes.
I mean, so Kapow, do you think? I mean, so diabetes, it seems like, is clearly both genetic and environmental, but like Scott said, it could be more. One is more than the other, depending on the person, whatever the factors are.
Hmm.
Kapow, do you think that there's any like illness or disease or disorder that can be just one or the other? Like it's
No.
just genetic? Yeah, right, exactly. It's going to be both to some degree or another. Um,
I was talking about like ones like earlier before um, some people got here. We were talking about how neurological disorders affect the nervous system, or
mhm,
yeah, how they affect the nervous system. Whereas some they're talking more about the
Interesting.
brain or the mind.
I am looking it up right now. The only place where I even find it being used is for autism, though.
Okay,
So
so it's just
let's
autism.
let's dive into this real quick for future listeners and you guys. Let's talk about it because I want to understand it a little bit better too. A spectrum disorder is a mental disorder that includes a range of linked. I know I just read this, but give me some time. Is a mental disorder that includes a range, a spectrum of linked conditions, sometimes also extending to include singular symptoms and traits. The different elements of a spectrum either have a similar appearance or are thought to be caused by the same underlying mechanism. In either case, a spectrum approach is taken because there appears to be, quote, not a unitary disorder, but rather a syndrome composed of subgroups, quote. The spectrum may represent a range of severity, comprising relatively severe mental disorders through to relatively mild and non-clinical deficits. In some cases, a spectrum approach joins conditions that were previously considered separately. A notable example of this trend is the autism spectrum, where conditions on this spectrum may now all be referred to as the autism spectrum disorders. A spectrum approach may also expand the type or the severity of issues which are included, which may lessen the gap with other diagnoses or with what is considered quote unquote normal. Proponents of this approach, the spectrum approach, argue that this is in line with evidence of gradients in the type or severity of symptoms in the general population. So, what that's saying is that everybody can be considered on some kind of spectrum.
I wonder
I
if
can
they'll
read.
take this approach with ADD and ADHD because
So, I found some of this on the other day. Let me see if I can pull it back up. ADHD. Um,
they used to think it was one or the other. Like they used to think it was ADHD or ADD, where some people didn't have a hyperactivity component, but like now they understand a lot more about how people orient their focus or their attention.
yeah, it says there is an ADHD spectrum. It's not a breakdown of the brain in one spot. It's a breakdown in the connectivity, the communication networks, and an immaturity in these networks in the brain. These brain networks are interrelated around emotion, attention, behavior, and arousal from external stimuli. So yes, it is a spectrum as far as I'm looking here.
And of course, with diagnostics, there can be symptoms that overlap,
Oh yeah,
like
I mean,
especially
there's
with
all kinds of comorbidities.
odd. Mhm.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, there can be a lot of. There's quite a few, I think, of overlap between ADHD and autism.
They're connected. Definitely connected. I'm sure the same parts of the brain are being affected. I would say that every mental disorder can be connected in some way because it comes from the fact that we have a deficiency in our neurotransmitters, in our neurochemicals. You know what I mean? That's the problem. We would think that the purely neurotypical person would have the correct distribution of all of these neurochemicals so that they could experience life in the most quote unquote normal way that a human is supposed to exist. You know what I mean? Um,
Mhm. And
you
does
still have to like
does the trajectory
the
of that?
majority
Oh,
the majority of people in the world go to work, they pay their taxes, they pay their bills, they have kids, they live their life. That's those aren't mental disorders, but they're still not neurotypical. I don't know what I mean, maybe there is some example of some extremely normal person that just their brain chemicals work the way that they're supposed to through evolution, and there's no deficits in any of it. I mean, I don't know of a person like that, but there may be a case, and that would probably be normal, I guess. What do
So
you think?
this is just with mental disorders, right? So like, how do we, how can we perhaps talk about diabetes in the
Oh, I
same
don't know shit
context
about that, bro.
as a
I don't
spectrum?
know. You
Well, I
guys
just
can go
wanted to
into that all day.
yeah, I just wanted to like relate it to like the other side, the illnesses and disorders that aren't, well, shit, maybe the mental is physical in some sense, right? But obviously we still kind of have this dichotomy between the mental and physical illnesses and
Well,
um,
in medical parlance, it's the cells in the body that are damaged, and then in mental parlance, it's going to be in psychological parlance, it's going to be whatever the neurotransmitters are, they're going to be defective or damaged, right?
hmm so
So
okay.
it's about damage of cells when it really comes down to it, and or damage of the function of cells, I guess.
Aren't neurons brain cells though?
They are, they're all cells, but they operate completely differently than the cells in your body.
It's just because there's like peripheral neurons that go all the way through your spine and then
That's right.
slowly
That's right.
fade into regular musculoskeletal muscles and cells.
Yeah. Trying to
Um,
separate any system completely would be futile. You know what I mean?
right. So, well, it just makes me wonder that if, because like you said, everyone has like is on the spectrum in some way, or however you worded that. And I just wonder if everyone is on the spectrum of diabetes or heart disease, and depending on how you
I
and
mean,
your
we can ask the
environment.
question to Wikipedia. That's what I do, bro. So, I mean, I would rather be academic. So, what's the question?
So the question is, well, it's just because I was basing it off
Can
of that
diabetes
be on like a spectrum or something.
diabetes be on a spectrum?
I can't find my damn lighter. It's so annoying.
This is a whole philosophical approach. That you, like, think of
What other
it as
approach is there to take?
as a spectrum. Of course, I get that. But
I'm finding things that, like, I found diabetes spectrum.
Yeah,
That
well,
doesn't give me what I want to see.
the only reason why I hesitate from searching it up is because I was using the terminology that you just read, right? It's like very specific terminology that might take us through a weird rabbit hole that may be difficult to find what we're looking for.
I don't see. I mean, it's saying, is diabetes a continuous spectrum from Oxford Academic? If it'll fucking load. Diabetes mellitus has been historically divided into type 1 and type 2, the type 1 being an autoimmune disease and type 2 being primarily a metabolic disease. Hang on, I'm having to read a lot to see if this is the case. Hang on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing a lot of, when I just search on Google, I'm seeing a lot of things that say spectrum of diabetic neuropathies, diabetes spectrum, the diabetes spectrum, understanding unusual diabetes. It looks as though that may be the case, but I can't say that emphatically or
Right.
definitively.
We don't know if they're using spectrum the same way that we were with
No, there's a
autism
lot
or
of
ADD.
they may be using spectrum exactly, or they could be talking about an actual spectrum.
Right, I hope that's what we're looking for. That would be.
There is spectrumhealth.org, and it says,
Well, I think isn't Spectrum a health company? I'd be careful with that, unless
if
it's
it's
a
a
different
.org,
website
it's
name.
not going to be a company.
Oh, okay, nice. Because I think I take some like multivitamins that say Spectrum on it. Honestly.
Yeah, I think that's just a company name for the
Yeah, it's
vitamin.
just a coincidence.
So it looks like, at least when I'm reading here, that there is some kind of spectrum in terms of diabetes, but I don't think that, like me, I don't think I have a little bit of diabetes. I don't know.
Right. True. Yeah.
Maybe that's the case. Maybe it
Could
is.
be benign.
Maybe the way that my pathology is going to go is that I'm in pre-diabetes stage right now,
Right. Yeah.
and then
It's
I will
dormant.
have to,
that actually goes into my next question about these illnesses and disorders, if they're on a trajectory. Like, are some of them of which you can be disorderly or disordered at one time and then in the future not, or back and forth, or I don't know how that goes.
You trailed off there. What'd you say at the end?
I said I don't know how that goes. Like, are some of these disorders ones that are on a trajectory? Like, does it change whether you have a disorder or an illness based on, like, how you are at the condition that you're at that time? Like, some
Can
people
you see patterns?
Like, some people have been diagnosed with ADHD at one point in their life, and then they no longer have symptoms or something like that, and then are they no longer considered ADHD or having ADHD by the DSM, or is that something that you get once and then you always have it?
So one of the main questions on Google is, can ADHD go away? It says many children, perhaps as many as half, will most likely outgrow their symptoms, but others do not. So ADHD can affect a person into adulthood and onwards. So it looks like as though from there's an ADHD.org. That's cool. Children diagnosed with ADHD are not likely to grow out of it. And while some children may recover fully from the disorder by the age of 21 to 27, the full disorder or at least significant symptoms and impairment persist into the 50 to 86% of cases diagnosed in childhood. So that means that they persist throughout adulthood, mostly.
Right. But I guess it's just like, and I understand that for ADHD, but then I don't know if like how that works with diagnoses to begin with. Like, is a person considered? Can a person like grow out of their diagnosis or something like that, or is it on a trajectory, or is it just something that
Well, with bipolar, it's mostly it's mostly nature, which means it's mostly your biology and genetics. So I mean, you can't grow out of bipolar. It's adult onset disease. You know what I mean? Just like yours is. So there are some disorders I imagine that I don't know. I could ask Google about every single specific disorder if it has a chance of going away later on in life. But I would say just from everything that I've studied so far in the past few years in my life that most mental disorders are there for life. But I could be wrong about that.
yeah. That's why I asked, because I don't know if there are
I mean,
some.
like I said, we could sit here and ask about every single mental disorder and see if it if it lasted or it could go away. And I do
I've
understand
never
what you
heard
mean.
of I've never heard of doctors doing that.
I do understand what you mean about the trajectory thing, because yes, if it's all nomological determinism and physics are the way that they operate all the time, then yeah, we are determined to be mentally ill from from our biology and our genetics and all of the physics and choices that happened previously. So if that's what you mean by trajectory, then yeah, people can't, if they're going to have a mental illness in the future, they're not going to be able to escape that because that's their biology. That's how everything fell into place. So, no choosing involved there.
I think it's still an important question to ask.
So it says ADD and ADHD, children diagnosed with it are not likely to grow out of it. That's from Central Health ADD.org. So it's called CHADD. That's interesting. CHADD .org. But it's saying 50 to 80% of cases diagnosed in childhood persist. 50 to 86%, at least by their studies.
Oh, and then also the symptoms could exhibit themselves differently from different stages in life to whatever, depending on what the illness is. So it might look different in children than it does in adults.
Most of the time, children can't be diagnosed with any serious mental illnesses because their brains are still developing. That's why most people with mental illnesses, it's going to be around the ages of 18 to 26. Like children can be diagnosed with ADHD and conduct disorder and a few other things, maybe like schizophrenia. But mental illnesses for children usually there's no serious diagnoses given to children until a certain age.
The brain is still growing, so the whole person
Yes.
is still growing.
Yeah, from all the psychiatrists that I've studied and from all the literature I've read, we can't make those decisions about a child's mental state until it gets to that fully developed. It's just never something that psychiatrists do. Of course, you can give a child psychotherapy and help them deal with their issues and stuff, and you can medicate them for things like ADHD and autism and stuff like that. But you can't say, well, they're going to have bipolar or they're going to have schizophrenia or they're going to be a narcissist or you can't do that. It's just not possible with children.
I wonder how giving medication to those children at that age, how it affects their long-term outcome, the long-term outcome of
Well, I
if they're
was
going to
on
continue to
Ritalin
have
from age.
AD.
Yeah, I was on Ritalin from age um, 5 until 11. Then I was on Adderall from age 11 until about 17. And my mom had to do it because I know I wouldn't have gotten through school any other way, so it wasn't her fault. I had to, but I'm sure it had some environmental effects on me to induce maybe parts of my anxiety disorder. Probably worse because of that. But I'm better off for having the education instead of having to
Right.
be
Yeah.
put in a mental institution or be homeschooled for the. I don't know. I'm just better for it that I was able to make it through school. But since I was ADHD, taking the Adderall always calmed me down and didn't hype me up like a regular stimulant does to a regular person. Um, I'm sure it's caused me some issues, some comorbid issues. Is that kind of what you were asking?
Right. Yeah. And well, you answered it nicely because then you have to, and we could use scientific data to create this risk reward analysis. But do you want to grow up and not have the proper schooling, and maybe the symptoms lessen over time, or do you want to risk getting other comorbidities such as anxiety or whatever, bipolar and stuff like that, but get the education that normal kids do in society? So
Mm-hmm.
it'd be nice if there were two of you, right, and you could do a control experiment and put one through one of them and through the other. But again, like I said, with hopefully scientific data, we can take these examples and then come to a better understanding of what is lesser of the two evils, essentially.
I often wondered if, because let's see, I had been treated with Ritalin from the age of 5 until the age of 17. I wondered if that affected the development of my bipolar 1. Because I know I had to go.
Hey! Hold on the show for a second. I got to get something to drink. Go finish what you were saying.
Sure. So, because I remember when I had the onset of the mania symptoms from bipolar 1, that I had to go off of Ritalin because it was pushing me into mania since it's a stimulant.
So do you think that you would experience similar bipolar symptoms or completely different bipolar symptoms if you were never on Ritalin through the ages of 5 to 17?
I don't, and that's what I don't know. But I do know that I had symptoms that were similar to mania when I was a child.
Okay.
Um,
Can you really tell those kind of things from that young? I mean, I don't know how young you're talking, but I wonder.
I'm talking like 6, 7, 8.
Right.
9, 10.
Yeah, that's crazy. If
Sorry about that.
if you can see those types of things, because I mean, geez, as a playful, careless child, it's hard to kind of see
Well, I
what
remember
would be
not
considered
being.
as mania.
I remember that I had to be really careful with my sleep as a child, even because if I stayed up too late, then I just wouldn't go to sleep at all. And it wasn't just being like wound up to exhaustion of um, staying up or something like that. It was like I would continue to have more energy. It wasn't. I didn't have other symptoms that were similar or that had to do with mania, other than the awakeness part and just the increased energy as a child. But but definitely in my teens, that's when I first started having more mania-like symptoms. So
Mm-hmm.
then I went off. So I went off of, even though I had been on the Ritalin since from 5 to 17, when I was in high school, I went off of it completely, and I had no idea how to function without it.
Yep. I
So then
feel
I
you.
had to teach myself how to. I had to. It's probably neuroplasticity type things. I had to completely change the way that I did things mentally so that I could function in class or really doing anything at all. So yeah. Luckily, I was at a alternative high school, and I lived at the school, so that was a place to do it. That would be it. But
Mm-hmm. No, I feel you.
but I don't know when.
Is there any other disorder that you would like me to? No, no, go ahead. What you were saying, I'd rather hear it.
Oh, I had a question, like for you personally.
Yeah, yeah.
When did you first experience mania at all?
Probably
For
the
me, it was
beginnings
like,
of it. The beginnings of it at like 22-ish, and that's when I started smoking weed.
oh, okay.
Yeah, that after I started feeling shitty, I started smoking weed.
I experienced it when I was 13, 14. They weren't calling it that then because they don't diagnose children with bipolar, but
That's right.
it was
Yeah,
clearly
I don't
mania-like
know.
symptoms.
Let's see if can children. This is why we have Google, guys. Can children have mania? And I don't remember all this stuff from going to school the first time, or I would just answer it.
Oh, it's okay.
Bipolar. So this is MayoClinic.org. Bipolar disorder in children is possible. It's most often diagnosed in older children and teenagers, but bipolar disorder can occur in children of any age. As in adults, bipolar disorder in children can cause mood swings and high. Okay, that's interesting. What does a manic episode look like in a child? Children and teens having a manic episode may show intense happiness or silliness for long periods of time, have a very short temper, or seem extremely irritable, or talk overly fast about a lot of different things for long periods of time.
Does it say anything about sleep?
Sleep disturbances, yes.
Yeah.
Distractibility, considerable increase in activity level, irritability and agitation. Notice same stuff that we have off our meds.
I remember there was this time where I decided to take out all of the buckthorn. Like it's a shrub. It's an invasive species. Can grow up to like
Okay.
the height of a tree or whatever. And I took out like all of that at my parents' property in like 2 days.
Interesting. So here is IBPF.org. Bipolar disorder in children is now referred to as disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, DMDD. Okay. So that's what it's in the DSM-5. Children with this disorder usually alternate between extremely high moods and low moods. So it's called DMDD.
I know someone who was diagnosed with that, but I didn't know that's what it was. I didn't know it was the same, or I didn't know it was related.
No, that's bipolar disorder in children is disruptive mood dysregulation disorder.
I wonder how many kids are diagnosed with, I don't know, ADD or autism. Let's say ADD, and they're given a prescription for Ritalin, let's say, and like at a public school or something, where everyone in the class maybe has ADD to a degree of some sort, but only a few of the children are actually getting the medication for it. You know, other kids are not getting the proper medication. And the teacher, of course, has to abide by all the students. So perhaps the class is being slowed down for all the other kids with ADD, and then the kids who are, on Ritalin and ready to focus up, it's a net negative. Like, they're not getting the teaching that, well, yeah, and I mean, all the kids, like I said, in this hypothetical could have ADD, but only a few of them are getting. I just feel like there's some disjunction there, and there's going to cause some imbalance in the class if there's, if that meant, if ADD is an epidemic.
Okay, so would you like to know?
Sure.
According, that was just a silly question. According to other ADD statistics, approximately 5% of all children between the ages of 5 and 11, and 11% of children between 4 and 17 have been diagnosed with the condition. Approximately 3 to 4.4% of adults in the world have the condition.
It's a pretty significant percentage, I'd say. 5 to 7 in kids, and then 3 to 4 in adults.
About 5.4% of men in the U.S. have been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD.
In their life?
I mean, I'm
Or,
assuming at any point in their life. This is just statistics
Right.
from diagnosis. What
Yeah.
did you mean by that question? That was a weird.
Well,
that
you
caught
gave
me
me
off guard.
2%. You gave me 2 percentages. One is kids, and then one is adults. So I didn't know
Yeah.
if
So I don't know the question.
Yeah,
I don't know.
while they were alive. That's what I
Gotcha.
mean.
Yeah. I didn't know if one was like while they were kids or specifically, or while they were. I mean, you gave me 2 percentages, right, in the beginning, of children and adults.
Oh yeah, that's just because they have age ranges: 5 to 11 and 4 to 17. They
Right.
do that a lot in clinical studies where they'll take same age ranges and overlap them sometimes. Like they'll have 5 and 11 and 4 and 17, and then they'll have like 14 to 18. Like they do that all the time in case studies. So that's why it gave me 2 different statistics. But the real one you need to pay attention to is that let's say it's, and this is just from one website, so I can say so
Oh, smile, Peter. I'm sorry.
2.4.
I-
Hang on,
I-
guys. One
I'm sorry,
sec.
Peter. I'll smile more. I guess I just have a bad humor. I don't know.
Okay, you ready? 2.4% of I was just trying to answer your question to the best of my ability.
Sure.
2.4% of young children aged 2 to 5 years have ADD. 9.6% of school-aged children 6 to 11. So 13.6% of adolescents from 12 to 17. Do you see how the statistics can change with these case studies?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Appreciate it.
it's not always going to be perfect because it's a hard and a soft science when we take psychological statistics, when we use psychometrics to tell these things. Because we can only tell from the people who've come in and gotten help. But that still gives
Sure.
us a sample size large enough for us to generalize to the rest of the population statistically. Does that make sense? All right. So the real thing to take from all this is that 4.4% of adults in the U.S. have ADHD. So that's what it says. But I would say, since I read another one, I would say 3 to 4.4% of all adults have ADHD or some type of ADD.
I actually would have thought that it would have been more, but I guess that's still a pretty significant amount.
Yeah, I mean, 3% of the world is like 300 million people, 400 something. If it was 10 billion people on the planet, then it would be 300 million.
And that's
Or
only the
3
people
billion.
that like come in and get the help, like you said. Like there's still
Yeah.
gonna be those undiagnosed.
Right. So that's 300 million people with ADHD, you know? So,
And there may be ones that aren't diagnosed at all.
exactly. So take that into account, you know? We can look at the statistics also of what percentage of people have bipolar? 4.4%. Weird.
So more.
And that's the same as the ADHD.
Or, yeah, I guess that's depending what statistic we choose.
It's yeah, it was 3 to 4.4% on the other, but this one says definitively on the NIM National Health Administration.gov says an estimated 4.4% of U.S. adults experience bipolar disorder at some time in their lives. Bipolar disorder is frequently inherited, with genetic factors accounting for approximately 80% of the cause of the condition. So, about what I said, 80-20. The 20 can exacerbate, the environmental part of that, the 20% can exacerbate the comorbidities quite a bit. But, yeah. So let's, we've asked a lot of cool, awesome tangent questions, but now let's actually start to dive in to the disorders. So we've talked about autism. I'm going to close that down unless we have any more questions later. Let's talk about them. We have a list of anxiety disorders, a list of dissociative disorders, a list of mood disorders, which includes depression disorders and bipolar disorders, trauma disorders like PTSD and stuff like that, neurodevelopmental disorders, sleep-wake disorders like parasomnias and insomnia and all that kind of shit, circadian rhythm sleep disorder, neurocognitive disorders like delirium and dementia and TBIs like traumatic brain injuries. And then, of course, substance-related and addictive disorders, right? We've also got paraphilias. We've also got somatic symptom-related disorders. We've got sexual dysfunctions, elimination disorders, feeding and eating disorders, conduct disorders for children, disruptive impulse control, stuff like that. OCD, obsessive compulsive related disorders, schizophrenia spectrum disorders, and then we got personality disorders. So that's all just the categories of disorders that we can talk about. That's why I thought we'd have quite a few shows on this. So we already talked about autism, and that's not necessarily covered on this page because it's not necessarily a mental disease. It can get to that point, I assume, since it is a spectrum. Hang on one sec. But I mean, we can talk about any of these. I'd kind of like to start with anxiety disorders. So we've got, let's start with separation anxiety disorder. Everybody know what that is? Anybody?
Nope, go for it.
It's an anxiety disorder in which an individual experiences excessive anxiety regarding separation from home and or from people to whom the individual has a strong emotional attachment. So, has anybody ever felt separation anxiety disorder up here? Ever felt like excessively a serious? I mean, I have an anxiety when I'm away from home. I have a bit of a separation anxiety with but I don't know if I have the disorder. I don't think so.
I think
Yeah,
I had
I'd say-
some of those symptoms when I was adopted.
Yeah, that's true.
'Cause I was in an entirely different country with people that didn't even speak the language I am.
I'd say it's pretty normal for people to have separation anxiety. Like, I mean, it just seems like it's a normal characteristic. But I guess to a certain degree, where if you just need to go home, right? Like, I mean, when does it become a disorder, I guess, is the question. But I'd say that most people experience separation anxiety to a certain
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah. It's also a natural part of the developmental process of children. It's most common in infants and
Yeah.
little children, but I mean, it may pathologically manifest itself in older children and adults too, even adolescents. So but it says, unlike separation anxiety disorder, Normal separation anxiety by itself indicates healthy advancements in a child's cognitive maturation and should not be considered a developing behavioral problem. So, separation anxiety disorder is an excessive display of fear and distress when faced with situations of separation from the home and or from a specific attachment figure, whether that be relationship figure or romantic figure or parental figure. The anxiety that is expressed is categorized as being atypical of the expected developmental level and age. The severity of the symptom ranges from anticipatory uneasiness to full-blown panic attacks about separation. So did you experience that kind of stuff when you were dealing with that, Paul?
Well, I don't think it would have been a disorder because
Right.
it's an appropriate situation to have that.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think it turned into anything disorderly for me.
Yeah.
Hey
Yeah.
Thomas, when does it become a disorder? At what level?
So in the DSM-5, and we went over this a little earlier, but I'll go ahead again. A disorder or an illness becomes a disorder in the DSM-5 when you have more than 60 to 70% of the traits that are listed in the DSM-5 the disorder, and if it impairs your ability to live, as in you can't get out to pay bills, you can't get out of bed, you stay in your room all the time, no matter what, you don't shower, you don't bathe, you can't take care of yourself or anything you're doing, that's when it becomes a disorder, at least in adults. Of course, children can have disorders and they don't function well either, but with these serious disorders, most of the ones we're going to be talking about, if you have a disorder, it's causing you serious impotence in your life to where it impedes progress at all stages of your life.
How does this affect the different attachment styles that people have psychologically?
So attachment styles are weird. Let's get into that real quick.
I know that's moving into psychology, but it seems like it's
That's
related.
okay. Well, let's talk about it. So there's
That could probably affect
there's secure
personality
attachment,
disorders as
anxious
well.
insecure attachment, avoidant insecure attachment,
Or I
and
mean the other way
disorganized
around.
insecure attachment. These are most likely in children. There are 4 adult attachment styles, so I'm assuming. Let's see here. Attachment theory has a long history and has been used as a basis for continuous research. The first step is to get acquainted with the basics and understand the different attachment styles. According to psychiatrist and psychoanalyst John Bowlby, one's relationship with their parents during childhood has an overarching influence on their social, intimate relationships, and even relationships at work in the future. In other words, your early relationship with your caregivers sets the stage for how you will build relationships as an adult and at work. Anxious, avoidant, disorganized, and secure. Those are the 4 adult attachment styles. So anxious. Ooh, that was loud. It's okay. For adults with anxious attachment style, the partner is often the better half, quote unquote. The thought of living without the partner or being alone in general causes high levels of anxiety. People with this type of attachment typically have a negative self-image while having a positive view of others. Anybody know anybody like that? I know quite a few people like that.
Say it again. They think negatively of themselves, but have a positive view of others.
Okay, so it says for adults, this is the anxious attachment style. For adults with an anxious attachment style, the partner is often quote unquote the better half. The thought of living without the partner or being alone in general causes high levels of anxiety. People with this type of attachment style typically have negative self-image while having a positive view of others. Does that make sense? We good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So the anxious attachment adult often seeks approval, support, and responsiveness from their partner to be able to validate themselves. People with this attachment style value their relationship highly, but are often anxious and worried that their loved one is not as interested in the relationship as they are. This is all a part of relationship and relationship psychology. You know what I mean? So a strong fear of abandonment is present, and safety is a priority. You know, that's a big thing for the anxious. The avoidant attachment is the dismissing avoidant type would often perceive themselves as lone wolves, strong, independent, and self-sufficient. These people have high self-esteem and a positive view of themselves. The dismissing avoidant type tend to believe that they don't have to be in a relationship to feel complete. They do not want to depend on others, have others depend on them, or seek support and approval in social bonds. So that would be avoidant dismissive attachment style. In terms of, these are all in terms of relationships. It can be an agape relationship, or it can be a familial, familial or friend relationship that you could have this with. The disorganized one, or called fearful avoidant, is this attachment style. It tends to show unstable and ambiguous behaviors in their social bonds. So for adults with this attachment style, the partner and the relationship themselves are often the source of both desire and fear. Fearful avoidant people do want intimacy and closeness, but at the same time experience troubles trusting and depending on others. They do not they do not regulate their emotions well and avoid strong emotional attachment due to their fear of getting hurt. This also goes into avoidant personality disorder, which we will talk about at some point. That's a personality disorder. So somebody with a disorganized or fearful avoidant attachment style may also have avoidant personality disorder. And I just read off the characteristics. Go back on the tape if you want to hear them. The last one is secure attachment. This is the good one. The three so far that we've covered are insecure. They are characterized by difficulties with cultivating and maintaining healthy relationships. In contrast, the secure attachment style implies that a person is comfortable expressing emotions openly. Adults with a secure attachment style can depend on their partners, but in turn, let their partners also rely on them. Relationships are based on honesty, tolerance, and emotional closeness. The secure attachment type thrive in their relationships, but also don't fear being on their own. They do not depend on the responsiveness or approval of their partners and tend to have a positive view of themselves and others. That would be the typical what we'd want in terms of an attachment style with someone. So those are the four attachment styles in adults. They also show in children. We can talk about that some other time on another episode, because I will go into developmental psychology quite a bit in the future.
Thanks for going over that. Because we were talking about separation anxiety disorder, and it made me think about that in the way that a person who is having a healthy separation anxiety could be having a secure attachment style.
Yeah.
If it was played out nicely, or it was like not nicely, that's the wrong word. But if it was healthy, but then it could be unhealthy.
Could be
later on. I know those are different things, but they're dealing with relationships, not just.
Oh no, you're fine.
The.
You know you're good, Paul. You can bring up whatever you want to. I'm glad that we covered it, because I wanted to refresh myself on the adult attachment styles. I was very familiar with child attachment styles, but I'd forgotten the names of these four. And just for the hell of it, we'll read them off again: anxious, preoccupied, avoidant, dismissive, disorganized, avoidant, or secure. So they all pretty much are pretty self-explained.
What would ghosting someone be?
Oh, probably an avoidant personality trait, but maybe not the disorder.
I'm just kidding, but I know what I'm saying. So many people.
But you know what I'm saying, though. Seriously, like you can have avoidant personality traits, but not have the disorder.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just Go ahead.
That seems to be like so prevalent in, at least in my generation, is people that they'll just ghost people.
Have you had that happen a lot?
I definitely have. Maybe I'm just like hanging out with people with People that don't know how to communicate. I don't know.
I've never been on a date, so I've never been ghosted.
I don't mean
can't-
just like ghosted in like a romantic sense too, but like it can happen in other ways, like when you're trying to meet people or something.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just trying to meet up with somebody like online that you've met or something, and they ghost you, that sucks. I've just never had anybody really.
Or like if you're
I
networking.
think in high school, a couple of times I got ghosted where people are like, "Yeah, let's hang out," and then they couldn't hang out. You know, I've been ghosted like that before, but
I've been ghosted at like a networking, like a professional networking thing where they're like, oh, let's exchange numbers, and then like
hmm
like what,
The
like
whole
what's the
point
point
is
of
to
that?
like make a connection and then just a ghost. Like,
I was like, what's the point of all that? Like, what are you trying to meet like people and like for your business or whatever? What the?
silly shit.
Anyways,
It's all good. That was a nice little psychology tangent. We need it because that's my favorite thing in the world. I mean,
I don't think I know very much about anxiety disorders to begin
well,
with.
you know one now, right?
That's true.
So, yep, you know one now. And separation anxiety disorder, if you actually had that as an adult, that would suck because you would be entirely dependent upon whatever caregiver or partner you had. And when they left or when you left home, it would feel you would have panic attacks and stuff if you actually had the disorder, not just traits of separation anxiety. Because like we said earlier, separation anxiety in children is a good thing if it's natural. So that's going to happen. But now let's go to the next one. Anxiety disorders can include specific phobias. That's characterized by an extreme, unreasonable, and irrational fear associated with a specific object, situation, or concept, which poses no danger really. But like you can have arachnophobia, you can have agoraphobia, you can have what's the one where you're afraid of everything? Does anybody know that one?
I'm not sure.
Is that
Panphobia?
agoraphobia?
Agoraphobia.
Oh, that might be panphobia. Yeah,
Okay.
maybe you're right. Let's look it up. Panphobia.
Agoraphobia has to do with public spaces, I think.
Yeah, that's it.
So it's
And
well,
then-
like agoraphobia. I think has to do with just being like outside of a building.
Yeah, I
Right.
think that's correct. Panphobia is correct. Panphobia is the fear of everything. Can you imagine living like that? How would you live?
I would definitely want drugs for that.
God damn.
Very,
So
very carefully.
what did we say before that? What was the other phobia? Not panphobia.
Agoraphobia.
Agoraphobia.
Like not being able to go
extreme-
outside. Or,
Yeah, extreme or irrational fear of entering open or crowded places or leaving one's home.
Dude, look up what the phobia for what is it when a word's spelled the same way forwards and backwards?
Palindrome.
A palindrome phobia. Look up what that word is. You're gonna get a kick out of this.
Oh,
See,
is it a
like, stuff like
palindrome
that.
itself?
It's a
Is it
palindrome, yeah.
Stuff like that, Scott. Is it just like a group of like 40 people on a Facebook group post that just
Yeah, I don't
agree
know.
to be scared of this, or are they actually scared of it, or are they just like, or is there another?
It's probably something like somebody just came up with a name for it, right? Palindrome phobia.
It's called ibophobia. Ibophobia is what it's called.
I never heard of that before.
AIBOH. Hang on.
Yeah.
AIBOHPHOBIA. It is a palindrome.
Yeah.
Phobia is Latin, so are most of the phobias listed in with Latin words?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, palindrome doesn't have anything to do with. It's just a literary thing. It doesn't have anything to do with phobias.
Yeah. And
Palindrome just means like the name Hannah is spelled the same way forwards as it is backwards.
Yeah.
That's a palindrome.
And I think it's mostly just a joke. Like
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
even the phobia in and of itself is just a joke. It's not like there's people who are like, I don't know, I legitimately afraid there might be like 50 worldwide. Very
Well,
yeah.
then what about the panphobia then, Scott? Like that means that they're going to be scared of the palindromes and be scared of like an eggshell and scared of literally everything.
Yeah.
So like, is that a joke too, or is that? 'Cause
Tell
I
me
can-
what your triggers are.
is that a joke? No, the reason I say ibophobia is a joke is because it started as a joke, right?
Oh,
Like,
I see. Because
Yeah.
it itself is a palindrome.
yes,
So.
sorry, I was
Gotcha.
just making a joke.
Okay,
did not.
panphobia is no longer an official diagnosis.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say
Panic
it seems-
disorder, I think that's a type of anxiety disorder.
Panic, yeah.
Panic disorder, I think.
Is it a
Yeah.
phobia?
It's not a phobia, but I think I was just thinking about other anxiety disorders, and I think panic disorder is one.
Yep. Yeah, to be in a state of panic is not a positive thing to be in.
There's like multiple words for this. Hang on, see Yeah, so panphobia or pantophobia means the fear of everything, and it's no longer used as a diagnosis. So it says it is not real technically anymore. So
If it ever was.
Well, tell
if it
that to the
ever
person
was-
that's afraid of it.
yeah, shit, they might be
Well,
afraid of us.
I mean,
even
this is
saying
why
it.
I'm asking. Like, I mean, I don't know.
What are you asking?
Is it like a group of 126 people who claim to have this thing, or is this like a serious?
At some
do we have any
point,
stats?
somebody thought it was good enough to put in psychological literature. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
I don't know when that point was, but I
Well,
imagine it was when we generalized a lot more about psychology and was less specific and less cognitive.
But
know what I mean?
but I also think it comes down to is like at one point somebody came to a psychologist with this thing. This psychologist is like, oh, I'm going to write this information down, right?
Yeah, you know,
I,
he has to
I
make
hope a
tenure.
psychologist isn't
Yeah.
just making shit up. And like when they
Well-
do get exposed to somebody with something, even though it's
Yeah, well, yeah,
extremely rare,
exactly.
we have
Yeah.
like some way to understand it, right? Like there might be like very rare diseases, like the guy who grows like trees on his hand or whatever.
I would just want to know the stat essentially,
Yeah.
so that I can make my own arbitrary judgment as to whether it's significant or not. Like if it's 0.0002%, then I probably wouldn't.
Do you guys want to hear some crazy phobias?
Yeah,
I do.
Fear of wind or drafts.
Oh.
Of
is
like
it?
what fear? A fear of wind.
What's it called?
And crowphobia.
Anchrophobia?
And crowphobia.
Anchrophobia. All right, what's another one?
Fear of human beings. Anthropophobia.
Damn.
Hmm
I was trying to guess it. I was trying to think of like, yeah, that makes sense. Anthro.
Like right off the bat, like the fear of human beings are like homophobia. No, that's wrong.
Yeah, well, yeah, Homo sapien phobia.
Here's
Wait,
a weird one.
if fear of human beings is anthropophobia, then what is a fear of furries?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Furry phobia? Not sure.
I don't know if there's a Latin
They
word
call
for
themselves
furry.
anthro.
So
What's
there's
another
Quanophobia?
here's a weird one, and I have this one really bad. Fear of pain, and the reason why I have fear of pain so much is because my brain won't let me fucking forget about it. It's called algophobia. I think
Algo.
everybody's probably got that to some degree.
Yeah, right. Well,
That's
everyone
what
other
keeps
than
us
Sadis-
alive, right?
unless you're Peter and you're paying for prostitutes to step on your balls.
or mass.
Here's another one.
Or
Here's yeah. Here's another one that's fucking weird. APEIR phobia. No, apeirophobia. Excessive fear of eternity or infinity or the
Oh, I
uncountable.
have that.
I have
For
thought
sure.
about infinity in that way and kind of been overwhelmed by it as well. So
When
I
you're
probably
trying to
have
go to
that a little
bed.
It happened to me today. Like it happens to me on a daily basis. I'd say.
bit. When you're trying to go to bed, when you're out doing something regular, and it just hits you the infinity of the universe and how big it is and how small we are and all that. Yeah, all the time. All
Literally,
the time.
when I wake up, I do that. That's like the first thing I do when I wake up.
Yeah. So, the fear of isolation is called autophobia. I imagine a lot of people have trouble with that, especially in criminal prisons and stuff. You know what I mean? Agoraphobia, obviously, fear of open spaces. There's so many. So bibliophobia. Anybody want to tell me what that is?
Books, fear of books.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was gonna say, give us the definition of it. Give us the definition, and let's see if we can guess what the phobia is called.
Here's the easiest one to guess. Bacteriophobia.
Bacteriophobia. Is that it?
Fear of bacteria. Yeah.
Oh no. Give us okay. So give us the description
Bacteri-
of it.
Bacteriophobia is the name of it.
Yeah. Give us So give us the description, and let's see if we can guess the name of it.
Oh, you mean of another one or the one that I just read?
Yeah, it's a game show now. It's a game show. We gotta guess it.
Okay, so you don't want me to read the fear of bacteria again. That's what I was getting confused by there, buddy. You want me to just go to a next one? Okay, I'm going to a next one.
Go to just
Chromophobia.
No, okay.
Fear of color.
Yep.
Okay, so
What?
yeah, you guys want to do that one?
How is
Right.
that a thing? Oh,
It is.
they showed that on that Wednesday show. That one girl. Wednesday, and then, or no, they call it something else, I think.
So what did we do wrong? I heard you huffing, Perry.
I was just, we could do that too, like give the name and then we give the description. I was saying give the description and see if we can guess the name of
Oh,
it.
there's no way. There's no way you'll be able to do that, I promise.
I did with the Pan one, the Biblio one, perhaps I would have gotten, I don't know.
Okay.
And
Fear of happiness.
Yeah.
No,
it
tell
it's
me
not
what.
gonna be,
Okay.
It's not going
Fear
to be
of
easy, but...
fear of happiness. Go.
I don't know that one.
Anybody?
Yeah.
These are actual diagnoses.
We could do the
Yes.
name one if you want, and then we
Yes,
guess the
these are
description.
actual diagnoses that you can look up.
Fear of happiness?
Mm-hmm. Cherophobia.
Okay. Yeah, there's no way I was going to get that.
Cherophobia. Yep. So there, this one you might get. Cyberphobia.
The fear of technology.
Fear of computers. Yeah. Domatophobia. Domatophobia.
D'Amato.
Yeah. Domato phobia. Domatophobia.
I don't know that one.
It's either the fear of domes or the fear of buildings, maybe.
You got close. Fear of houses.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
That was pretty good. Yeah. That was pretty good. There's some crazy ones on here. We're just in E. I mean, there's so many. Like, there's equinophobia, which is the fear of horses.
Well,
That one makes sense. Like
okay.
equine.
Yeah, equestria, you know. Gamophobia is the fear of marriage. I'm sure that's a pretty regular one.
Game. Okay. What is it?
Genophobia is the fear of knees or the act of kneeling.
Geno?
Yeah,
G-E-N-O?
Genu. Genophobia.
Yeah. There's no way I would have gotten that.
Isn't that just called conservatives after Colin Kaepernick? But I'm dumb.
So have we gone over enough phobias? Do y'all want me to keep doing that, or do you want me to go on to the
I
next
kind
mental
of
disorder?
enjoy it, but yeah, it's one.
Is there a fear of lists?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm fucking sure of it. There's a fear. Ichthyophilia is the fear of fish or eating fish.
No, I'm sorry. I said lists.
I
We were
know
reading a
that.
list.
I know that, and I don't know where it would be on this list, but I'm sure there is.
Right.
I'm sure there is. You know, I mean, there are people who are afraid of mailboxes. You know what I mean? So,
What was the eternity one again?
Holy Christ! Hang on.
So many. I could just look it up honestly
Hundreds.
myself. Yeah.
No, it's all good. Where was it? I was just on it a minute ago.
Peter did bring
Oh,
something. up to-
Apeiro phobia. Apeirophobia.
Okay.
Apeirophobia.
Yeah,
A
it's so
P
weird.
E I R O phobia.
Oops. Not that.
A pyrophobia. Yeah, a pyrophobia.
Do you know why people use like social phobias this way? Like
Well, I mean,
homophobia, transphobia, that kind of thing. Those are not what these are, but
there are phobias of transsexual people. I'm sure that's in the list somewhere. But I mean,
oh,
you know what I mean. You
but
can
that's
have a
not how
phobia.
people
You can have an
colloquially use it.
You can have an irrational phobia of anything. Anything.
Mhm.
So we're just speaking specifically right now about anxiety disorders, things that would cause you unnatural anxiety or panic attacks. And in these phobias that we're talking about, it's to such an extent that it causes a disorder in your life. I mean, people who have agoraphobia, and it's the disorder. They don't just have traits of it, but it's the disorder. They can't leave their fucking house. You know what I mean? They have panic attacks and stuff when they go outside and shit. So that's
Dude,
the only reason we're covering the phobias is because if it's bad enough to have the phobia and say it is a phobia, it's causing them disruption in their life. You see what I mean?
Peter says
you.
Islamophobia is an oxymoron, right? And then he also said fear of tomatoes when you said domatophobia. That's what I thought of too. I thought of tomatoes, like fear of.
Interesting. There's so
Yeah,
many. That's a weird one.
Yeah, name a couple
Okay,
more.
so
just for my.
So there's one there, obviously homophobia, lesbophobia, fear or dislike of lesbians, heterophobia, fear or dislike of heterosexuals,
Yeah.
right? So it could be such a level of fear or phobia that you would have a panic attack around a homosexual. You know what I mean?
I know I do.
So
Certain
yeah.
ones.
All these phobias, there's a bunch of them. These would be all cultural prejudices and based on cultural prejudices. You know what I mean?
So,
So those
Yeah.
are like really irrational fears, very irrational.
Kapow, are you gay? Kapow?
I am.
So let me
Are
ask
you?
you. No, I'm not. Let me ask you and Thomas a question. Because, so I had a girlfriend in college, and she had a gay roommate, and so
college?
I was like, we were all in the living room watching a movie, and her and I were cuddling, or whatever, like my arm around her, whatever. And she said to me, like, we shouldn't do that around Hunter. Because how would it make, like, wouldn't it be weird if he had another guy over and he was, like, cuddling and snuggling with them? And I thought no to myself, like, I wouldn't be bothered by that. Would you guys be bothered if you were Hunter in that situation and I was, like cuddling with my heterosexual girlfriend?
I'm not bothered by anything like that.
Right. So, and Kapow, your answer, do you have a preference to that, or?
As a gay man who's eaten pussy multiple times, I really don't think it's a problem.
Okay. So, well, you're bisexual, or have you just eaten pussy as a gay man?
I'm just,
Because that's
like we talked a little bit about spectrums earlier, and
yeah, right, sure.
so sexuality is just a spectrum.
Okay. Well, I just thought it was like, I don't know why. I guess she would have been.
I don't
she
understand
would've-
her logic.
Yeah, she would have felt uncomfortable if Hunter had a boyfriend over and we're cuddling. I guess. I don't know. I thought that was weird. Weird memory that came up.
But I guess I'm trying to. Maybe she's trying to be polite, but I'm not sure polite about
Well,
what.
sure, but yeah, well,
Not
exactly.
exactly.
What about, yeah, what is, I guess just PDA in general without any,
I'm assuming you were in a home though, or your apartment,
but
or whatever.
yeah, an apartment, but she was specific because it was Hunter and he's gay, and well, maybe not, maybe now, I'm the bigot and she wasn't even thinking about that in general, she was just thinking about the PDA aspect. I don't think she was though, but.
So it sounds like she was trying to be considerate, but she didn't know how to
But
logic that
consider
one.
it because for
Like,
her,
there's-
she would have felt uncomfortable if, you know what I mean? It seems like she would have felt uncomfortable, and that's what she was considering. She was
Yeah.
considering how she would have felt if Hunter had a boyfriend over. and were cuddling with each other. So that's why I don't know. I could be wrong though. Again, in my interpretation of that.
It's kind of funny though, because like that's the standard or the norm. I mean, it's just there's more
right,
heterosexual people in the world, so
This was
like heteronormativity is just a thing. So I'm sure that Hunter would have been fine, but
5 years
I
ago.
guess he could have asked.
Yeah, no, and I'm pretty sure he was. Like, I knew Hunter very. I had 2.5 years of getting to know Hunter, and I doubt that he would have, unless he just wore like such a good mask that whole time. But I don't think he did. I think he was pretty genuine about.
I do have a question for you, Perry.
12
What,
inches.
yeah. Why is this something that caught your attention that 5 years later you're still thinking about it?
Because
We're talking about social
we
phobias.
brought up homophobia and heterophobia, and
No,
so
no, but it seems to me like I don't know. Did this event have like a big impact on you, or is this just like just off the cuff bringing up this thing?
no. It's something that I've thought about, like
Yeah.
a number of occasions over the past 5 years, and
Yep.
again, the memory has now just sprung up again for a 20th, 25th time, whatever, since.
So what do you think made it an important memory to you?
Something to do with the context of social norms, perhaps, and morality. And
Okay.
again, and like it seems as though, again, unless she was just doing it in a manner of a context of PDA, it seems as though she has a phobia of homosexuality and being around that, perhaps. And that could be the uncharitable reading of the situation, but again,
Yeah.
I don't think it was.
So you think she might be projecting?
Yes, exactly. Unconsciously. Her intent is good, perhaps. I still think that, though maybe she brought up a pseudo issue. I think it was a pseudo issue. Again, I had known Hunter and her roommates for like almost a year at that point. Maybe not a year, maybe it was a little bit. Yeah, no, it was definitely actually longer because we were at her second apartment throughout the relationship. So I know that it was later in the relationship when it happened.
So Hunter had probably seen you and your girlfriend cuddling before.
Yes. And I'm sure they talk too. You know what I mean? Like as roommates, perhaps they talk.
How long did your relationship last after this incident?
Not very long.
Not very long.
Probably like another 17%.
Okay.
So which equals probably about 3 or 4 months.
3 months. I mean, like that's the thing, I guess. Like getting to the point where you're like trying to understand what was going on in another person's mind. Like maybe she was just like getting ready to break up, right? And she's like, let's just not do it. And that's the excuse she gave.
Oh
right?
no, we were very hedonistic in our sexual desires at that point.
Okay.
If that was, and again, the sexual drive is different perhaps than the love, and her wanting to be in a relationship, right? Those two things could exist independently of each other.
Yeah.
But it was a rough relationship, no doubt.
Yeah.
Me having a lot of mental issues as it is, I wasn't ready for a relationship at that point. Though I had many relationships before that, regardless, I didn't know, unbeknownst to me, only if I had known better type thing.
Yeah. So I guess the point that I was like going to is like, have you ever heard of the notion of like mind reading as being like a cognitive distortion? Right.
Well,
so
mind reading is definitely
like,
not a thing.
No, yeah, I know that's the point, right? So like if you're in a relationship, you can question if somebody lies to you, but if you start making different justifications for like their point of view, and you're not necessarily looking, it's like, well, I feel you lied to me. Why did you lie to me? And you go to the point, you're like, you lied to me because of this, or you lied to me because of this. That's where you get into trouble, right? That's what's considered a cognitive distortion once
I have
you start quote unquote mind reading.
I have such a desire to know the intent of other people,
Yep.
not just the consequences of it. Like, if she lied, oh, whatever. If I was a consequentialist, I'd be like, oh, whatever, like, give them the benefit of the doubt. But if you lied because you were trying not... I don't know. I mean, trust is a huge thing, I would say. And I was irrational about the measures that I took to try to understand the trust that existed between her and I. And you're right, like, because you can never know the mind of someone else. They could just say, no, I wasn't lying, and that was a lie, of course.
Exactly. It's impossible. Yeah.
It's impossible. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, but
but
it's like
yeah,
the only thing I'd say is like I don't know. It's something that I did when I was younger until I found out. It's like, oh no, this is not good.
what
So
wasn't
now I making assumptions or saying, well, the reason this person's doing this is because
Right.
this is what they
good?
think.
Yeah.
Because they could take that same action thinking a bunch of different things, but what I'm saying, because this is what they think, that's me fucking all up in that shit, right?
You know, I actually,
Yeah, I'd say that I'm.
That's a problem.
Yeah, go for it, Brett.
you know, I actually had a breakthrough with something like this a little while ago about people's intentions. You know, if I really need to know, I'll ask the person, and you know, I'll kind of, you know, be very straightforward with them. Be like, hey, like, can you be honest about this, about why you know, whatever it is, if I really must know. But also to pursue the why, you know, like some people just, you know, they only care so much about themselves. You know, they say that they care about others, but they also have a fundamental thing where they can't really try to think of how to word this. They really can't explain why they did what they did. It's not that you're a bad person. It's not that you did something wrong. They just, you know, they acted the way they did. And so the whys can be 1,000 whys.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I often don't pursue it, because the why will drive you crazy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. So to ask them
Yeah,
what
exactly.
they're doing, like, doesn't make any logical sense. Like 90% of it is their unconscious or whatever percentage.
Well,
So
well
like,
that's like Brett makes the perfect point, because there are people who they might do something and they have a completely logical reason for doing it now, but then down the road it's not the same, right? So like, so I don't know, somebody who's making a decision that's based off something that they don't even understand. They might do something now, and to them it feels like, yeah, this makes sense. This is what I need to do. But you could ask them a year later, and they have a different opinion on things, and you're going to get a different answer. And you ask them again 2 years later, and they're going to have a different answer.
that's
Like
why the
I-
word tentatively is so good.
Yeah,
Because you could
because
just put that at the end of everything that you say.
Yeah, and like
Maybe
I
they have a
known
mental
people like this.
disorder, like
Exactly,
what we're
exactly.
talking about today.
Exactly,
Mental illness or
Paul.
a mental,
Exactly.
a mental
Yeah,
illness or a mental
we're gonna
disorder.
get back to that at some point, but I'm just letting y'all tangent for a minute.
Oh no, that's sort of what I was trying to tie it back to, Paul. Paul just Paul put the ribbon on the fucking on the package there.
Yep, that's what we're doing. So we've covered a lot. This episode can probably be just mainly about anxiety disorders because there's so much to talk about. We've talked about separation anxiety disorder. We've talked about specific phobias. You know, phobias are an anxiety disorder. Remember the disorder if it impedes your life to the point where you can't function. Now let's talk about social anxiety disorder. That one's pretty obvious, but we'll read about it real quick. It's also known as a social phobia. You know what I mean? Social anxiety disorder, or SAD, known as SAD, is an anxiety disorder characterized by sentiments of fear and anxiety in social situations, causing considerable distress and impaired ability to function in at least some aspects of daily life. These fears can be triggered by perceived or actual scrutiny from others. Individuals with social anxiety disorder fear negative evaluations from other people. Physical symptoms often include excessive blushing, excess sweating, trembling, palpitations, nausea, panic attacks. Stammering may be present along with rapid speech. Panic attacks, like I said, can also occur under intense fear and discomfort. Some affected individuals may use alcohol or other drugs to reduce fears and inhibitions at social events. It is common for those people with social phobia to self-medicate in this fashion,
Drugs.
especially if they're
Oh,
especially if they're undiagnosed, untreated, or both. This can lead to other disorders, that comorbidities. So, social anxiety disorders is sometimes referred to as an illness of lost opportunities, where individuals make major life choices to accommodate their illness, you know, without getting what they want. So, according to the DSM-5 guidelines, the main diagnostic criteria of social anxiety are fear of being the focus of attention, or fear of behaving in a way that will be embarrassing or humiliating, avoidance and anxiety symptoms. So, you can look at the differences between like traits, or like the big five personality, where you have like introversion, that's a personality trait. Preference for low stimulation settings, limited social energy, prefers individuals or small groups. Everybody's a bit of an introvert, you know what I mean? Here, at least, I think, in these critical thinking groups. And of course, we don't want to confuse social anxiety disorder with introversion or shyness. You know what I mean? Those are personality traits. They are not mental illnesses. They don't come with the panic attacks and the overwhelming fear of humiliation, and just the high stress that comes from it. I mean, this can very severely impact somebody's life to the point of where they can't function. So that's social anxiety disorder. Does anybody know anybody suffering with that, or has anybody ever suffered with social anxiety disorder?
I mean, I feel like you were reading my resume. I don't know.
Yeah, so like, I mean, I think it's like the easy thing to say that like I do have that, but I don't think it gets to the point where it's completely debilitating, right?
It's a spectrum.
It's like
yeah.
like me, like constantly at work, I'll flub my words because I get nervous, and somebody says something like, "Hey, thanks, man." I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I'll use you do it too." You're right, and I do this shit all the time because in my mind I'm like, I don't know, I just like it just goes to this weird place where I get a little bit nervous over that shit, but it's not like debilitating in any sense.
Right.
So I don't necessarily, I don't think I'd put it as like a full on social anxiety, but like I definitely am uncomfortable around people that I don't know. Like if you put me in a room with 5 people that I know, I'm gonna be way more comfortable than if you put me in a room with 5 people I don't know.
I mean,
And then it's that will increase substantially to a certain number and then decrease, right? So like I can be 5 people up to 100 people. I'm gonna feel real weird. Put me in a concert and I'm gonna feel all right.
mm,
You get me around enough people, like it doesn't bother me anymore.
yeah, I
don't
mean,
know what
it's naturally uncomfortable if you know everything that we know about how confusing nature is, and I mean, that can put you in.
It makes me
for
think
me,
that
at least that's what I feel like.
it makes
I
me think that my younger
experience.
sister has.
I just
have that.
walk around very introspected and in my own world, because there's no other world that I can be in,
Yep.
and for that reason, it gets weird when. I mean, I don't even know if you guys exist. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I'm stuck with that in and of itself. Like all of
We're
those-
all stuck with that. Nobody can disprove hard solipsism, but I mean,
Yeah.
until we find a way out of our own matrix, we have to live as though we're not. So, does everybody get the cognitive aspects and what leads to behaviors of social anxiety disorder? I mean, I pretty much read them earlier. I was just making sure everybody understands.
Yeah, I mean, you listed like a lot of things. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Social anxiety disorder is very prevalent, highly prevalent, especially among females.
Is there anything like I remember when I was a kid, I used to get like made fun of all the time because everywhere I'd walk, I'd just look at the ground. Like that's just the way I was. Like when I was walking, I'd just be looking at the ground in front of my feet while I walked.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
That's
But
what I mean. I do
like
that.
people thought it was strange
I do
when
that
I was a kid.
nowadays as an adult. I do that
Yeah,
because one, I've twisted my ankle over like 40 times, both of my ankles. So I
yeah,
never want to step in a divot or something. So often, literally, even at the gym, like I don't want to knock over or step on someone's phone or something. So
yeah.
naturally, I'm like looking up and down, and like sometimes I find myself just hard looking down. I
I
don't
do that
know.
shit all the time, dude.
Yeah,
I'm always looking. I weigh 300 pounds, so I'm always in public places looking around me, so I don't
yeah,
step on kids or
yeah.
people's feet
Literally,
or anything like
literally, you
that.
could kill someone.
Yeah,
Literally.
yeah.
Oh man,
So I'm always paying attention.
I stepped on a lizard a few weeks ago because I wasn't looking down, and this thing was just crawling and begging for its life, and I had to contemplate whether to kill it or let it suffer, and I let it suffer because I didn't want to. I don't know. I didn't want to kill it, but if I was looking down, I wouldn't have stepped on it, right? So
Yeah,
Yeah.
but for me, I guess like when I was, I I should be honest, I still do it now. Like when I'm at work and
Cheers.
I'm walking
yeah,
somewhere and I'm very intently focused, I just look at the ground. Like I don't want to like make eye contact with people. I'm just like I'm fucking like
you're
just
locked,
going.
you're zoned
Yeah,
in, like
yeah.
yeah.
There's something there. I don't know what it is, but I feel it's. It seems to me it's different than everybody else. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not
So I
everybody.
can. I'll read
Yeah.
this real quick about the cognitive aspects of since you are suffering a bit from this, Perry. In cognitive models of, excuse me. Let me get a sip of water real quick. My bad, guys.
That's what I need too.
Ooh.
Thomas, how dare you? How
How
dare
dare
you
I?
want water? How dare you?
Trying to stay on topic here. My bad. uh, Trying to teach and learn at the same time. In cognitive models of social anxiety disorder, those with social phobias experience dread over how they will present to others. They may feel overly self-conscious, pay high self-attention after any activity, or have high performance standards for themselves irrationally. According to social psychology, in the theory of self-presentation, an affected person attempts to create a well-mannered impression towards others, but believes that they are unable to do so. Many times before the potentially anxiety provoking social situation, they may deliberately review what could go wrong and how to deal with an unexpected case. That's called catastrophizing. A lot of social anxiety disorder people do that. After the event, they may have the perception that they performed unsatisfactorily. Consequently, they will perceive anything that they may have possibly been abnormal or as embarrassing. So these thoughts may extend for weeks or longer, where they can sit and think about it, their social interactions for weeks at a time. And this causes cognitive biases to come in and cognitive distortions. And these
Yeah.
cognitive distortions are the hallmark of what is treated in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. Um, Cognitive distortions and biases are hard to separate because they all lead to fallacies about thinking about the self. So they're just self fallacies are what cognitive distortions are. They're very, very interrelated with cognitive biases. But the thoughts of people like this cognitively are often self-defeating and inaccurate. That's why people with social anxiety have the problems, because they're thinking they're fucking everything up, but they're just fine. So those with this social phobia tend to interpret neutral or ambiguous conversations with a negative outlook, and many studies suggest that socially anxious individuals remember more negative memories than those less distressed. What do you think about that, Perry? Oh, sorry. Sorry,
That
Paul.
makes sense. I mean, it seems as though the more distress that you're under, the more negative memories you're going to have. But yeah,
Yeah, I don't even think it's. I don't even think it's the distress pair.
So it just seems like the only cure is skepticism, to not fill in a blank with something other than a probabilistic
That's
default.
that's where.
Statistics,
Yep.
good probabilistic mathematics, good logical argumentation, good evidence.
So is being dogmatic a cognitive bias that
I would
psychologists
put that
use?
under polarized thinking. That it has
Yeah.
to be either black or white.
But I do think there's a differentiation when we're talking about systems and or we're talking about ourselves, right? Like
Sure.
I do think a lot of these things that we're talking about is with the way like one interacts with their own mind. Like you can have these same kind of thoughts about a specific system, say like capitalism or socialism and stuff, and it's not going to be considered a disorder or anything, right?
Right. Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
Obviously, we could take a spectrum kind of view out of it. It just seems like cognitive biases shouldn't be a derogatory, like a bias shouldn't be a derogatory word, because don't we just use our biases constantly? Like that's the interface that we have, is cognitive bias.
Oh, well, when you say bias is a derogatory term, are you specifically referring to how it's used in like news media?
Just whatever Socratic definition we can give to it based on that definition
Oh, well, I
of
mean,
what
well,
a
'cause
cognitive bias is.
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, but that's just using the term, right? Because I can have a bias towards like a specific type of music depending on what type of music I like,
Right, that's
right?
not so that this shouldn't be a derogatory word.
Yeah, like I don't think it
So
is. Right?
liking a different type of music, that's more like just a bias in general, just like a general bias. I wouldn't call that a cognitive bias. You know what I mean?
So what about
Cognitive biases are heuristics that have gone haywire and cause fallacious thinking.
there's the word again. That's right, heuristic.
Heuristic would be like rule of thumb. It's the things that are programmed into us through biology and through evolution that have allowed us to survive easier. These heuristics that allow us to do quick thinking.
Our ontological biases on how we think reality may be. Again, we have a probabilistic, like we have a bias towards some probabilistic idea of what it could be. You know what I mean? Like it just seems like
Yes.
underneath it all is going to be the bias. That is the interface that we use, it seems.
Yes.
So I have a bias of skepticism, right? Or however you want to word that. I don't know if
It's not a cognitive bias, though. It's just you.
Okay, I see.
The opposite of skeptical is gullible. So it would just believe anything that comes your way, right?
Not a cognitive bias, so there's some way
Yeah.
that we
I
can
mean, we could go through the
differentiate
list of
these.
cognitive biases and see if it's in there, but I just don't feel like doing that right now.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't think it is because like I mean like having a different opinion on what kind of music you
Now,
like is not a
skeptical to
cognitive
the point of
bias.
solipsism. Skeptical to the point of solipsism, I could say that's a bias.
Skeptical to the point of solipsism.
As in, I'm skeptical of everything except my own mind existing.
Right.
That's what solipsism is. I am the only mind in existence. Yes. Sorry, I'm not getting frustrated. I was wondering why you were confused at it. We've talked about solipsism like a billion times.
No, yeah, I'm not confused about solipsism. I'm confused as to like you're saying that there's a threshold to where it becomes a bias. I'm curious.
Yeah,
as to
when
what,
it
like,
malfunctions and causes fallacious reasoning.
Gotcha.
A heuristic.
Okay.
Now, this is just my opinion. Okay, a heuristic is something that is natured into us, if I should say it that way, and then the bias comes when you have. Let's see if I can give you the best definition so that we don't fuck it up.
Is my mic coming through? Can you guys actually hear me right now?
Yes.
Yeah, you're better
Okay.
than what you have been in the past.
Yeah, because I'm holding it right into my face now.
A cognitive bias is a systematic pattern of deviation from a norm of thinking or a rationale or rationality in judgment. Individuals create their own heuristics and subjective reality from their perception of the input. An individual's construction of reality, not the objective input, may dictate their behavior in the world. Thus, cognitive biases may sometimes lead to perceptual distortions, inaccurate judgments, illogical fallacies, or what is broadly called irrationality.
bias.
Gotcha. So irrationality
While
and rationality play a big part
Sure,
of.
yes.
of that.
While cognitive biases may initially appear to be negative, they can, in some forms, actually help humans identify similarities and patterns and create shortcuts, heuristics, to navigate through common situations.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
Like
that's
if you're,
cognitive bias. Yes.
yeah, like here's a cognitive bias that will be to your benefit, Perry. If you're like on a wharf and you see like a bunch of guys standing around smoking cigars and they got like knives on them on their sides, right? Like your cognitive bias should say like, let's not go by those guys, right? And that's probably going to be a positive thing.
Well, if it's a positive thing and we're using rationality, isn't it now the opposite of cognitive bias to be whatever the
No,
other
it's
biases are?
it's not. It'd still be a cognitive bias. It'd just be a cognitive bias that worked in your favor, right? Like because you could go down there and probably 90% of the time nothing's gonna happen, but 10% of the time if like these guys want to like just go all fucking ape shit and like you end up dead, like yeah, that's a
Yeah, so it seems rational to not, I'm not
yes,
gonna roll a 10-sided dice
yeah.
just for
Yeah,
fun when I can easily
like
take
I'm
another.
not gonna walk into a neighborhood of that's run by Crips in a fucking red hoodie. You know, I mean, like that's just like something you probably shouldn't do. It's a cognitive bias, but you could probably do it, and maybe nothing will happen to you.
All right, so Scott, is me turning right on a green light a cognitive bias?
No, it's not because that's a system, right?
What was the
Like
question again?
Me turning right
turning
on a
right on
green
a
light.
green light. So turning right on a green light is a system that's been put in place of like the rules of the road, right?
So that would just be following the rules.
Yeah.
Cognitive biases happen when we do things like we store memories. There's a whole grouping of cognitive biases, like associated with we reduce events and lists to their key elements fallaciously. Like there's one called let's see, modality effect. Let's go to that one. The modality effect is a term used in experimental psychology and cognitive biases, most often in the fields dealing with memory and learning, to refer to how a learner performs depending on the presentation mode of studied items. So, like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an easier explanation than that for people in the future. So, like, we always have to think in like quick situations with heuristics. These questions like, what should we remember? What do we need to act fast? We don't have enough meaning in the context, or we have too much information. So, like, there's a cognitive bias of, let's do anchoring bias. The anchoring bias is whereby an individual's decisions are influenced by a particular reference point or anchor. So both numeric and non-numeric anchoring have been reported in research. In numeric anchoring, once the value of the anchor is set, subsequent arguments, estimates, etc., made by any individual may change from what they would have otherwise been without the anchor. Does that make sense?
That kind of gets to where I'm going. Like you have an anchoring bias that determines, these simple judgments such as turning right on a green light. So that's probably what I was looking for, an anchoring bias.
Sure. For example, an individual may be more likely to purchase a car if it is placed alongside a more expensive model, the anchor. It says prices discussed in negotiations over the car that are lower than the anchor may seem reasonable, perhaps even cheap to the buyer, even if said prices are still relatively higher than the actual market value of the car. So that would be a cognitive bias leading you to think that, oh, this is
I
cheap
see.
in comparison to what I see in front of me. That's the whole thing of having too much information, where we notice when something has changed, but we don't connect the 1 + 1 = 2 thing there. We don't see, oh, it's just a fucking cheaper car sitting next to a Ferrari. You know what I mean? We don't
Yep.
take that into effect. So I mean, we can go through this. there's a whole subset of ones where we fill in characteristics from stereotypes and like generalities or prior things that we've learned, like prior histories. So, let's see if we can find one that's good.
Would
The
you say
placebo
that
effect placebo effect is a good one to mention if we're talking about that, where we fill in characteristics from stereotypes and generalities, right?
that makes
We
sense?
think that
Yeah.
a medicine's going to help us affect something because that's the status quo. It could just be a sugar pill. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that leads us to cognitive fallaciousness, cognitive biases. But these shortcuts, these heuristics, which are not malfunctioning, we can come to, because these are all programmed in us. Programmed. They're all natured into us. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many and they're so integral to our survival, but we have to be able to mitigate them as best we can to be the proper heuristics instead of becoming cognitive biases to where we use them to reason fallaciously. Now, I guess you could have a cognitive bias where you didn't Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually a very good. That's very good advice. Very good advice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's weird.
Mhm.
Yeah. Psychotherapy. I mean, psychotherapy helps. Cognitive behavioral therapy, rational emotive behavioral therapy, all these different therapies that are tried on people. That kind of stuff can help change the behavior, the thoughts and behaviors of people suffering with these attachment styles that are bad. You know what I mean? Your friend may have social anxiety. You know what I mean, or an avoidant attachment style to the friend, or who knows? You know what I mean? I would have to get them in a clinical setting, and then it would still take me a while as just like somebody who's a novice, who's been doing this on the side for a long time. It would take me, a couple of sessions to get to see what the real problem was, if they had social anxiety, if they had attachment style disorders, if they had, any of that kind of stuff, because it's very difficult to suss out in a non-clinical environment. It's extremely difficult. So, mm, yeah. Hmm. Well, that person may actually have the disorder instead of just a few social anxiety traits. When it gets to the point when they have 60 or 70% of the traits in the DSM, and then it gets to the point of where they can't function, it really gives them panic attacks, it gives them anxiety disorders. That's when the social anxiety disorder has become a disorder and an illness. So I hope that person gets help. Hmm. Right. Emotional abuse. I got you. Yeah. 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 Mm, hmm. Yeah. Sounds like she might need an antidepressant, you know? Prozac is an antidepressant, so yeah. Hmm.